Yeah.
Okay. Prabhus, can you hear me at the end? Okay. Okay, so before I start, I seek blessings from all of you, also from Chanakya Pandit Prabhu, before we delve into this topic. When I first told him that I'm thinking of talking about this topic and I asked him for some guidance, he gave me this book. I don't know if you've seen this, it's available on Amazon. He gave it to me from his personal supply. So I'm really grateful for that, Chanakya Pandit Prabhu. And so Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj is an icon. Although physically he's no longer with us, his life, his legacy, and his books give guidance to all of us for how to apply the principles of Krishna consciousness in our day-to-day life, and most importantly in our relationships. Okay. So for this talk, these were the references that I used. One is the book that Maharaj wrote, Leadership in an Age of Higher Consciousness. There's 2 parts, volume 1 and volume 2. And together with both these books, there are 200 chapters. Okay? And the topic for today is 1 chapter from volume 2. So that tells you the depth of his teachings and how much he has had to give to the world. And then the other one, I showed you this book, The Light. The Light is a book that is a first-hand account of devotees who were with Maharaj while he was sharing Krishna consciousness in Africa, West Africa, from the ground up, really under very austere conditions. And then in the book called Many Moons by His Holiness Giriraj Maharaj, there's a chapter on Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, and also conversations between devotees who served Maharaj towards the end. Of course, I heard lectures from Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, lectures from His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj, with whom Radhanath Maharaj and Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj had a very special friendship. They served together, but most importantly, Maharaj was intimately serving Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj towards the end, when he was suffering from cancer. So those were the sources. And so I was thinking about, as I was preparing, I thought Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj is such an ocean. Like if we decided every Sunday for whole of 2024, we'll only talk about Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, we'll have material to cover, and at the end of 2024, we'll realize that we covered only 20% of his life. Okay, so there's so much, it's an ocean. So what we are hoping today is that we have a glimpse of his biography, his teachings, and hopefully we can have either more future sessions or workshops that build upon what he taught to develop a successful spiritual communities and projects. So just to make sure that we do have an icebreaker and get everyone engaged, what makes an individual a leader? People can chime in. We are all individuals here, but what makes an individual a leader?
Lead by example.
Okay, lead by example. What else? Enthusiasm. Okay, so those are qualities of a leader, right? Leading by example, enthusiasm, those are qualities of leader. But what makes somebody a leader?
Desire to serve.
Desire to serve. What else? Mataji?
Taking responsibility.
Taking responsibility. Yes, yes. So I was going to ask, like, does having a title make someone a leader?
No.
Okay. So does having authority that comes with the title, is that alone to be a leader? No. So as Sita Sundari Mataji said, not only in Srila Prabhupada's movement, but in any space we inhabit, whether it's work, whether it's family, if you take responsibility, then you're a leader. Okay. So, all of us here in this room, we want to serve Srila Prabhupada in our own way. We all take up some services. All of us in this room, you are leaders. Your impact might be small or big, micro or macro. Some of you might be entrusted with deities worship. Some of you might be involved in building a temple, but there are leaders at every level in ISKCON. Yes, Prabhu?
Taking voluntary responsibility.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Not just responsibility, but voluntary.
Voluntarily responsible.
Responsibility, somebody has to tell us, but the person leading the somebody has to tell him or her. The feeling, then they take.
Yes, taking initiative, right? Not being told, but just seeing the need and doing it. So a leader is also somebody who gets people who would otherwise and naturally not work together, but gets them to work towards a common goal. Set aside their individual whatever, but work towards a common goal. So that's another leader. Another characteristic that makes an individual leader. And a leader also inspires and brings out the best from us. not imposes, but just out of inspiration, we do that. Okay, if you think about how this temple runs, the size of our kitchen and the size of our pujari room, it's a lot of inspiration that drives our people to do what they do. Like Navin Krishna Prabhu said, voluntary initiative. So now I'm going to segue into, can people chime in about what are the reasons we should study the life of pioneer devotees? When I say pioneer devotees, I mean devotees who are direct disciples, gave their blood, sweat and all, heart, mind and soul to this movement. What are some of the reasons we should, in addition to reading Srila Prabhupada's books, in addition to listening to lectures, why we should systematically study the lives of devotees?
Inspires.
Okay. So is it inspiration alone? Yes, definitely it's inspiring, but is that all that it is?
Knowing the Lord.
Okay. Getting example, knowing our history. What else? Mataji's, what else?
Feel grateful when you hear all the struggles that they have gone.
Yes. I think Sita Sundari Mataji saw my slides. So it's a deeper appreciation of how they live the philosophy, right? And also appreciation of our Guru Parampara. We have this immense gratitude when we see how much they struggled for us. Of course, we need to know our history, deeper appreciation of both the philosophy, how it's lived, not just in the books, but how was it lived and practiced. And make us wonder, make us appreciate that we are part of a glorious heritage, right? And ultimately, in my humble opinion, it's to help us realize Srila Prabhupada's goal for us, that every single one of us in this room become pure devotees. So that should, yes, it's an aspirational goal, but we should take steps every day to assess and measure whether we are getting closer to that. So that's the main reason to study the life of pioneer devotees. Okay, and Bhakti Maharaj, like all this, he checked these boxes and many, many more. Okay, so before we learn about Bhakti Maharaj's contributions, we need to know about his biography, the circumstances under which he was born and raised, and that makes us appreciate him even more. Okay, so he was born in Cleveland, Ohio. So this neighborhood that he was born in was nicknamed the Forgotten Triangle. So that was a neighborhood. It was high in crime and violence. People were born into poverty and died in poverty, with no opportunities, a lot of crime. And his mother was very, very pious, and she instilled a deep sense of compassion. Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj didn't own more than three sets of clothes at any given time. But if someone came to their house and they looked like they were even more poor, Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj's mother would say, give your clothes to them. So he learned it from her, that you should always be attuned to the world around you, see that people are suffering more than you, and that you don't need a lot to give someone else. Whatever little you have, you can still give. Okay. He also had a speech defect. Okay. So he would stammer, and you can imagine if a kid stammers, what kind of treatment they get in elementary school, right? Ruthlessly bullied, right? However, there was one time he didn't stammer, and that was when he was speaking on passages from the Bible. When he was glorifying God, when he was speaking from the Bible, he was just flawless, just proficient. And people noticed that, his teachers noticed that, and they would, so soon he became famous, they would invite him on TV as a child prodigy to talk about the Bible. So he was very prodigious. He went through a lot of therapy and self-will. He willed himself to overcome that speech defect. And any of you who've heard his lectures, you would have been surprised to know that he had a speech defect, right? Such an amazing orator. So when he was in this place where he had to carry a gun just to keep himself safe, okay, somehow he was noticed by a Jewish student who went to this very prestigious prep school, private school called Hawkins School in Cleveland. That school is more than 100 years old. And I personally have seen some of the students from that school because I used to be a debate judge for Rancho's school. And those students really stood out in terms of how well prepared they were. So, and Maharaj got a full scholarship to go to the school. So here he was incredibly bright, but no opportunity in the neighborhood he was born. But then got this amazing opportunity to go to the school. And once the teachers saw him, they saw that they were dealing with amazing potential. So they really nurtured that. He was very good in debate, public speaking, arts, sciences. When he graduated from high school, remember all this was before the civil rights movement. He was born in, what year was he born in?
1995.
No, 1950. 1950 he was born. So this was, and the civil rights movement started when? In the 60s, right? Martin Luther King in the 60s. So imagine how America would have been before the civil rights movement. And that's the environment in which he grew. He refused to be a victim of his circumstances. He took every opportunity that came his way. And when he graduated from high school, so many colleges came calling. Because here they saw how excellent he was. He was a scholar. But he chose to go to, people know where he went to?
Princeton.
Princeton, yes. He went to Princeton. And the reason he went to Princeton was Princeton not only paid his tuition, gave him a salary for coming to school, housing, but gave him 2 plane tickets to go back every year to Cleveland. And he wanted to see his mother. That was important to him. So he went to Princeton, and there he majored in psychology. Okay, and he started many new student organizations. People told him it was very rare at that time for African Americans to get acceptance into that Ivy League school. So people were like, let's start an organization just for African Americans. And he was always global. He said, why just African Americans? Let's do all people in the world who are suffering from oppression or colonialism. And he started the Third World Center. Okay? He was a big student activist. He was very active in the civil rights movement. But because he was majoring in psychology, he really explored a lot of metaphysical aspects. He would go to yoga classes. And he was studying yoga for 2 years. When he graduated, top of his class, he went to work for the Office of the Public Defender of New Jersey. So anytime somebody commits a crime, the state assigns a prosecutor, and somebody needs to assist the prosecutor in terms of evaluating those people. And that's the job he was doing. In addition to that, he was a consultant for Educational Testing Services of America. So these are all reputed, established organizations. So he had a job there. And he would do his job and then promptly go to New York, learn yoga and all that. And his yoga teacher said, I will never be your guru. I am not your guru. I'll never be your guru. If you want a Jagat guru, you should go to Srila Prabhupada. Okay. And he said, because he had this image of Hare Krishna devotees, he said, the people who wear bed sheets and dance, those. So he was very skeptical in the beginning. Okay. But then when he met Srila Prabhupada, everything changed. Remember, this is a devotee who had already did a BA in psychology, so he had the academic view of the mind. And now he's exposed to the Gita and Bhagavatam, which has a very elevated view of psychology, and it just clicked. He really was fully convinced, and he was initiated as Ghanashyam Das. What does the word Ghanashyam mean?
Cloud.
A dark rain cloud before rain is about to pour, and he really lived that name. He gave a torrential rain of spiritual knowledge to everyone he came across. Okay, so he was very charismatic, and he joined the Bhaktivedanta Library Party. So he was mentored by His Holiness Satsvarup Das Goswami and His Holiness Hridayananda Das Goswami. So he would stand out wherever he was, right? First because of the skin color and all that, but he had such a charming smile. If you Google Bhaktivedanta Maharaj and look up all the pictures, you might not find a single picture where he's not smiling. He had this charming smile, and he always had a plan. So if you wanted to go to a university and get Srila Prabhupada's books in the library, what do you think your strategy would be? Your goal is to get the books into a library, into a university library. I'm giving you a set of books, and some books are not even published yet. Remember, Srila Prabhupada is dictating.
Yeah.
So first canto is published, but the other books are not yet published. So what would our strategy be? We want to go to Ohio State University, keep the books in the library.
Contact the person
We would contact the person in charge of the library, right? You know what he did? He went to the Department of Religious Studies and found the chair of the department. So each department will have 20, 30 professors. He went right to the top because he knew if he convinced the man at the top, then the rest would follow. So he would go to the chair and he would go talk to them, and just a few minutes of talking to them. There are hilarious stories. Like he would have met some of them in the restroom, not like in the office, okay, in the hallway, wherever, and he would convince them, and the chair would say, I want all these books for my department, like required textbooks for students. Not only the books that were already published, but pre-order the books that were to be published. Okay? And then Bhakti Maharaj would say, that's great that your students are getting it, but what about the college? Shouldn't the library also have a copy? Mm-hmm. And then the child would be like, actually that's a good idea. So then he said, can you give me a letter that you are ordering these books? And he would take that letter and go to the librarian. And the librarian would be like, well, the chair already said it's good, so of course we're going to get the books. So he was incredibly successful. And all these reports would reach Srila Prabhupada. And when Srila Prabhupada had health challenges, and he would get these reports, His Holiness Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj would make a devotee read the reports from Bhaktivedanta Maharaj. And Srila Prabhupada would just get so enthusiastic because Maharaj was doing so much. And then after he conquered this frontier, he went to communist Europe, Eastern Europe. So first, in communist countries, nobody likes the fact that anybody is practicing religion. And second, it's a very homogeneous population, meaning that there's not many people of color there. So he could have been prosecuted, thrown in a jail for distributing spiritual literature. And he couldn't have hid and mixed into the crowd. He would stand out. So imagine the personal risk he took to go and give those books. And he was like leading the book distribution scope. So Srila Prabhupada had a lot of affection for him. And so then he went to Mayapur, Vrindavan. He also went to Jagannath Puri. And those of you who know Jagannath Puri, they are very, what can I say? They don't allow devotees unless you're born in India. Okay? So, and he sneaked into the temple. He somehow convinced, because of his charm, his smile would put people at ease. And his plan was, I'm going to tell them I'm from South India, and they'll just let me. And then one panda found him, grabbed him, and this one panda made sure he fought all other pandas and took him all the way that he was standing within a few inches from Lord Jagannath in Jagannath Puri. And that panda who took him said, I know who you are. You're not from South India. I know who you are. Because if Maharaj had opened his mouth, everyone would have known. He's from America, right? But that panda said, I have been observing you and I see how sincere you are and you have to see Jagannath. So that one panda escorted him all the way back and brought him back. So the point is, when he set his mind to it, he made it happen. Will the universe, out of the sheer force, he made it happen. So then we need to talk about his commitment to Srila Prabhupada. Of course, he was doing all this. And, I forgot to say. So he had established his Institute of Applied Spiritual Technology in Washington, D.C. So that was his home base. So he had established a restaurant called Govinda's. He saw that inner city communities were ravaged by drugs and violence. So he wanted spiritual development for inner city communities. He was doing really great, a lot of impact in the Washington, D.C. area. And then one night he had a dream. Matter of fact, this was a recurring dream for him, where Srila Prabhupada would hold him. Somebody was knocking the door. He would open the door and see a lot of devotees who are dark in complexion. He could have interpreted the dream to say, Srila Prabhupada wants him to preach to African Americans in America. So I'll just go to places and preach exclusively to African Americans. But he took the dream to say, Srila Prabhupada wants me to go to Africa. Okay. So how many of you know whether Srila Prabhupada visited Africa? Yes. So which country did he visit? Nairobi. So His Holiness Brahmananda Swami Maharaj had gone to Africa. So if you see in the map, I don't know if you can see, but East Kenya, Nairobi, Mombasa is all in East Africa. And East Africa, there was a thriving Indian population, Indian diaspora. So when Brahmananda Maharaj left the US, he took a very treacherous route. Like he could have gotten into trouble or been put in, he actually was put in jail along the way. But then escaped, came to Kenya, and there was the Indian population welcomed him, and he set a temple, and Srila Prabhupada came there. But that area that you see shaded in green up there is West Africa, okay, which was much more austere than the rest of Africa. That area was torn by war and civil war and strife, very austere conditions, not many good roads, actually zero infrastructure. So nobody went there. And Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj chose to go there, chose to go to West Africa. Okay? Not to places that were already established, but to a place that had zero concept of Krishna consciousness. Okay? And once he went there, he was able to mingle with the really simple villagers, people who are poor, but also he was able to mingle with president of Zambia. You can see this picture with Nelson Mandela.
Yeah.
And you see how he's dancing, like how joyful he is when he came to the US with other Maharajas. So we have to ask ourselves, how did he do it? How did he do it? So the guiding principles of the principle-centered leadership was, he shared Krishna consciousness in a non-sectarian way. Okay? Imagine going to Africa where there's no background for them and presenting this philosophy. Imagine all the resistance he would have got. Okay? But he said that Krishna consciousness is ultimately a process to love God, and that transcends any religion. Okay? Because he was a scholar, he would quote extensively from the Bible, from the Quran, and from the Gita about the holy names of God. So imagine you go to a place that's very foreign to your philosophy, but you're speaking their language, you're speaking passages from their scriptures. Wouldn't you be able to connect, right? So he understood his audience. He wasn't in a lofty place, this is the philosophy, all of you are here, I'm just going to keep saying what I want to say. He understood his audience and realized what was needed to get them to appreciate Harinam and Krishna consciousness. So that was the first step, non-sectarian. He was very non-sentimental about it. He believed strongly that faith has a rational and a logical basis, that this is a lived philosophy, it's an experiential philosophy. All of you who are here, at some point you would have been odd, most of us, me, came for the prasadam, but then eventually what got you in was the intellectual and the stimulating aspect of the philosophy, right? So he was very articulate in how to explain that to a group, and showed that this is not at all a sentimental process, this is a very logical process, and that your character is transformed, and the proof is in the pudding. You try it and then you see, you become a better version of yourself. And the most important thing is he was not judgmental. He didn't go around and say, you're doing this, da, 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 da. None of that. Because he realized that Krishna consciousness is a language of the heart. It's a language of love. You have to establish relationship with another person before you explain the philosophy. They have to first trust you as a person before they are receptive to what you say. And he realized that when you are, for successful relationships to work, what are the key things we need? We have relationships with people inside the temple, at work, in the family. For successful relationships, what are some of the key ingredients we need?
Love and trust.
Love and trust.
Being genuine.
Yeah, feel genuine. Accept the other person for who they are. Accept the other person and make them feel good, empower them, right? And he knew that when you judge, you don't do either. You don't accept them, you definitely don't empower them. Okay? So he was more curious, but he was not judgmental. Okay? And then he made the point that we are all servant leaders, right? We are taught when we sign our emails, what do we say? You're a grateful servant. So then there's no dichotomy between am I a servant or am I a leader? We are actually a servant leader. We are serving Srila Prabhupada, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Radha Krishna, all the other devotees, and leading in that aspect to bring more and more people to this wonderful process. So we are servant leaders. So this is just that picture that I show is a memorial that was done at Princeton University. So if you are curious, you can see Princeton University did a memorial. They invited all the dorm mates of Maharaj. So it's really nice to hear that. So if you have time, please listen to that. So the next 10 or 12 slides that I have is talking mainly about the 10 principles of servant leadership that he elucidates in that chapter. And giving examples of each, so I don't know how much time we'll have, but we'll see. So the first one is a servant leader is a deep lover of people. So these are Maharaj's words. Okay. So who do you see in this picture? Who recognizes this gentleman?
Muhammad Ali.
Yes, Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali, yeah. He didn't say, that's all Maya. I don't want sports. I don't want to deal with them. These are celebrities. Whoever was open to his advice, in his worldview, in Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj's worldview, there is no one in the world who is undeserving of Krishna's mercy. There is no one in this world who is undeserving of Krishna's mercy. So wherever people sought him out, he went without judgment. Without judgment. So he was friends with him, he gave him advice. So and the beauty in this book is that for every attribute he describes, he draws a Sanskrit parallel to the philosophy. So our philosophy is built on para dukkha dukhi kripam buddhi. Right? We need to, not in an artificial way, but genuinely feel the suffering of others. Genuinely feel the suffering of others. Only then we will, whatever we tell them will be authentic. Okay? So I talked to you about, I showed you West Africa in the previous slide, but it was not just West Africa that he had an impact. Remember, when he was in Africa, what else was happening in South Africa at that time? Apartheid, right? South Africa was going through a lot. And a lot of racial tension between the folks there, Indians, Africans, everything. And he was there when the Radha Radhanath temple in Durban opened. He was the one who introduced Nelson Mandela to speak at that time. So he had his imprint everywhere. Not just today we happen to talk about Africa, but he had his imprint in Russia and many other countries. So he did not discriminate between anyone. He truly saw spirit, soul in everyone. Okay? And how many of you know that, and his vision was very expansive and inclusive. So when we come to Krishna consciousness, our worldview should really become very broad. Not slice and dice into group and very sectarian, but as broad as possible. How many of you know that he consulted for the United Nations? So remember, in Africa, when the imperial powers left, there was a lot of war and civil war and strife and all that. And so in the United Nations, he was asked to serve in committees that focused on conflict resolution. He had to talk with presidents of different countries. There was a lot of struggle about sharing resources, sharing water and all that. And he was there. And when you read his books, the foreword is written by those people who served with him in the United Nations. And he also, how many of you know that he helped people in the Pentagon? So he didn't say, I don't agree with some actions or whatever. He was open-minded enough to go and share the message of the Gita and the Bhagavatam to anybody who asked him for it or needed it. And so he was very close with people in the Department of Defense. He even counseled people who did services for the US Senate. So here he is spreading the mission in Africa, but maintaining an active presence in all spaces in the US. He also was a regular contributor for the religion section in the Washington Post. So which meant he had to know what was happening daily in the world. Because he felt like this knowledge comes alive when you try to see what is happening around the world through the eyes of scripture. People are fighting and are in distress. How does Bhagavad Gita help address the problems here and now? So he contributed regularly to journals. And his biggest emphasis was on community development, and he has written so many books, and that's a whole other topic to talk about. Emphasis on spiritual communities, and he emphasized people over projects. Remember I told you about all his successes in the library party? I showed in a few slides before. So he was very austere. He would chant anywhere from 16 to 48 rounds, wake up at 2. He would not waste a single minute. You know, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there are 9 symptoms listed of somebody who has bhava for Krishna. And one of them is avyartha kalatva. You don't waste a single minute. He really embodied that. So if the library opened at 8, he was there at 7:50. So he could find a place to park and be there. Before the library opened, he was there. and he would do his strong sadhana, morning program. But do you think the rest of the library party would have been happy with that level of austerity, or what? What do you all think? No, right? Because he is very intense and not everybody is matching up to that or able to match up to that intensity. So when he was in Mayapur, he went to see Srila Prabhupada in Mayapur, and he heard from other people that everybody in the library party were going to resign. They were going to go tell Prabhupada that we can't do this, it's too austere, it's too intense, and we are going to submit our resignation. And remember, at that time the library party was very successful and playing a big role, and Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was devastated when he heard that. Here he is thinking he's serving Srila Prabhupada and spreading the mission, and there's a account that one time Srila Prabhupada like rubbed his head because he was so happy about Maharaj. And on the other side, this is how other devotees were perceiving him. And that's when he made a vow to himself that yes, projects are important, yes, pleasing Srila Prabhupada is important, but to never stop caring about devotees with whom he was serving. That all that has to happen, but you have to care deeply about the people that you're with. And then he talked to them and reconciled, and things moved on well from that. But one thing he took away from that, and throughout his life you'll see that he always emphasized care of devotees, particularly women, children and elderly. Women, children and elderly, particularly those who are sick. He truly exemplified the principle of Yukta Vairagya, utilized everything and everyone in Krishna service. If someone came to him with a microphone Christmas Eve, asked him, can you speak at a radio station in Nigeria? He was like, yeah, let's do it. Okay. Because for him, it's like, do people listen to other people who are famous or not famous? Famous. And what is fame? Fame is one of the 6 opulences of Krishna, right? So if he was more often seen in TV, then people would recognize him, and then people would be more receptive to his message. Okay? So for him, that was his North Star. How can we get Srila Prabhupada's message out there? And any means, he wasn't shy to take them on. So the next one is a servant leader creates lasting value. So he writes in the book that focusing on short-term success is prayas, but focusing on enduring long-term success is shreyas. I'm sure all of you here have been to Gita Nagari, and if you haven't, please do visit Gita Nagari. Okay? So that is a living, beating example of simple living and high thinking. So you've all been to the farm, you see they grow their own food, they have like ahimsa milk, ahimsa dairy products, and they also have something for children. If Sunday school is so inspired, we can plan that. It's called Camp Spark, where children for 1 week can be in the rolling hills of Gita Nagari and enjoy and learn about Krishna consciousness. So the point I'm making is, he somehow married all those purposes: simple living, high thinking, farm community, self-sustained living, not depending on others, and taking care of children at the same time. So that was his vision and created lasting value. So the third thing is he says that servant leader helps people feel happy and secure. And the Sanskrit phrase he quotes is Sarve Sukhino Bhavantu. He was very attuned to people's needs and resolution of conflicts. Okay. So here you see how beautiful he is, holding that little baby and welcoming people who came to visit the Gita Nagari farm. So when Srila Prabhupada was asked, how do we convince people about Krishna consciousness, he said, just show people how happy you are. If we are grumpy and we give them chant and be happy, people will be like, you don't look so happy yourself, right? So that is, each one of us has that responsibility to really think about how we are doing. Are we secure? Are we happy? And what are the barriers to that? And he quotes, this is a direct quote, love, righteousness, and the divine are stronger than the negativity of this age. Therefore, be loving and righteous. The more you align with the divinity, the more protection you will have, and the greater will be your spiritual enhancement. But see the first line of that sentence, it's love, right? So he emphasized that. And he also mentions a servant leader is a philosopher. He always seeks truth and dharma. And in the book, he defines truth as seeking the inner relatedness of things. How are things related? And how are things related to scriptures? He was very open-minded. He was very aware that he was a steward. So whatever, imagine being in West Africa, and West Africa is no different than India or the US, where 4 years one party is in power, and then another 4 years someone else comes. So if you were close to that first 4, what is your fate with the second 4? Not very good, right? So he had to be very savvy. He had to make sure that assets that were acquired for ISKCON, land, temples, whatever, those were not subjected to the political leanings of the day. So which meant that he had to, yes, he interacted with heads of state, but had to maintain enough distance so when the political winds changed, ISKCON wasn't affected. So he thought about all that, he thought all that through. And he constantly asked himself, and he implores us to do that same thing. Who will benefit by what I'm about to do, and who will be harmed by what I'm about to do? To ask those questions before we indulge in activities and general things. And one thing that he emphasized a lot is a servant leader leads from the inside out. And he emphasizes achar, prachar, but most importantly sadachar. While knowledge gives us power, like after a while in the Krishna consciousness movement, you know a lot of verses in the Gita, a lot of verses in the Bhagavatam, you know the philosophy, and knowledge gives you power, but it's actually character which is power. And all this knowledge that we're reading has to be reflected in our character. Okay? And so he was very strong about that, and he said when we have all these, we will have the highest level of integrity, and that's what inspires other people to follow us, seeing that we have integrity, fairness, and honesty. He also felt that a servant leader is principle-centered. The circumstances under which Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was and today are different, but the principles are the same. So principles are something that endures the test of time. So you need to be very conversant about karma, about jnana, vijnana, realized knowledge, knowledge of the soul. And when you have all that, then all these other qualities automatically manifest itself. And he placed a very heavy emphasis on mutual and personal accountability as a leader. And next thing he says is a servant leader is a powerful visionary. The pictures that you see there are Accra, which is the capital of Ghana, the top temple, Port Harcourt, and then Lagos, which is the capital of Nigeria. So there, if you go online, you'll see that they have amazing deity worship, amazing structures, not only temples, they have food for life programs, they have public schools, and a lot is happening there. And so when he says a powerful visionary, he's defining what that vision should be. That vision is Shastra Chakshusha. You see everything through the eyes of scriptures. And Leela Manjari mentioned when I first asked about a leader that they should lead by example. So he talked about all that. Okay? And then next one is a servant leader leaves behind a culture of enduring excellence. So it's not like when he was there, things were great, and then when he left the planet, things disintegrate. No. A servant leader thinks about what happens when he's physically not there. So this is, how many of you have heard about the Live to Give campaign? Leela Manjari has heard. So this is done by Vaisheshika Maharaj. This is a global campaign. Targets are set for how many Gitas should be distributed. And last year, the target was, I can't see the number, but 15,400 and something. Okay, and they beat the target. They distributed 18,945 Gitas on African soil. And that lists all the countries that this dedicated foot soldiers are going and doing it. And now with COVID, we are all very familiar with Zoom classes, YouTube and all that. But even in 2018, 2 years before the COVID pandemic struck, IFAST, the institute he opened in Washington, D.C., was giving online classes on self-realization and Krishna consciousness throughout the globe. So he was far ahead of his time. And he empowered his disciples to utilize whatever technology they had. And he lists 4 things about what it takes to leave behind a culture of enduring excellence. The first is the ability to restructure and adapt. Things are changing. How do we adapt with the changing times and keep the message relevant? How do we allocate resources and set priorities for projects? And there's a typo, it should be re-engineer. And a leader is always thinking about how do we eliminate excess, how do we increase efficiency. But above all, a leader is very, very introspective. He reflects, he's reinventing constantly. What should I do more of? What should I do less of? And so these are some of the principles he talks about. And the next thing is a servant leader keeps everyone engaged according to their propensities. In Sanskrit, what's the term for propensities? I don't know what pravritti is, but varna. Varnashrama, we talk about varnashrama, right? Varna. So propensities are determined by our state of consciousness, what level of purity we have, what we are good at, what we are competent at, our occupational capabilities, and what is our spiritual orientation. And he was a master at seeing all that in different people. And a servant leader will fulfill needs and not the wants. So and this is a table that I got from the book, when someone wants sympathy, what they really need is empathy. Okay? So really hearing the unspoken words from people that we interact with. Okay? And if all of us imbibe this table really deeply, I think we would have each taken a first step and done our part to developing a strong spiritual community here in Columbus. When someone wants riches and wealth, what they really need is feeling fulfilled in their life. When someone wants fame, what they really need is appreciation. And we want to be generous in our appreciation of other devotees. When someone wants power, what they really need is support and opportunity to do their service. When someone wants to dominate, what they really need is protection and security. Okay? When someone wants prestige, what they really need is recognition and acceptance for what they do. And when they want freedom, what they need is good guidance and facility and room to explore within boundaries. And when someone wants intoxication, what they really need is altered awareness and self-actualization. So he could read people so nicely. I didn't mention one thing in that slide about leader feels happy and secure. I had to say this because it tells you about his personality. So in his day, he had this incredibly busy schedule, morning program, Bhagavatam class, Kirtan, talking to presidents, talking to religious universities, talking to regular universities, heads, and all that. And in the afternoon, he would take all the devotees out to the beach and do sports. Okay? So think about it. Just let that image sink in your mind for a minute. And they would play football. He would play football with the devotees. Not only that, they would do a race. Maybe the kids will know better. Are you guys familiar with wheelbarrow? Where there's a pair in a team. One person has to crawl on the beach sand. The other person has to hold the feet. And they all have to race towards the finish line. Okay? Imagine this initiating guru who one day is talking to Nelson Mandela and he is playing the game. And when they started playing the game, he would pick whoever was the weakest person in the devotee group, physically the weakest person in the devotee group, and partner with that person. Okay? And they would play the game. So he really, yes, he was very elevated, but he made people feel like he was one among them. So that's something really, really important for leaders, for all of us to do. And next he talks about a servant leader is an expert in delegation and empowerment. We can't do it all. At some point we have to delegate and empower other people. And he makes a very key point. Work can be delegated, but accountability can't. So you can tell others to do it, but if it isn't done right, we should not throw them under the bus. We should take accountability when the task doesn't get done. Okay. Did I say something wrong? Okay. Okay. So, and he has this amazing quote about empowerment. When your desire to serve is beyond your capacity, yet you act without hesitation, this is the moment empowerment occurs. Everybody who's left their comfort zone and does service in Srila Prabhupada's movement would have realized this at some point. Okay? When you think, I don't know how I'm going to do this, don't have the resources, I don't know how I'm going to pull this off, and you still keep plowing, and then somehow magically things work out, right? So that's what he so eloquently has put in this quote. So I'm going to summarize what are the lessons from the life of His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. So I'm going to ask you some questions just to see if you're all paying attention. So what were the 3 ways when I said that he went to West Africa, which had very little resources under very austere conditions? He presented Krishna consciousness in 3 ways. Who remembers what those 3 ways were? Yes, Mishika.
Non-judgmental.
Non-judgmental. What was the other one?
Non-sentimental.
Non-sentimental.
Non-sectarian.
Wonderful. Good. Okay. Non-sectarian, non-sentimental, and non-judgmental. Okay. So he did that, and he also was very particular about the importance of building strong communities. So when he was very sick towards the end, devotees would come from all over the world to come see him. And everyone who met him and left came away with a deeper faith in Krishna consciousness. So even at that moment, when physically he couldn't do all what I just told you he did, he was able to inspire and empower other people. And that's what it means. Like, so much of what we do, there's an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Okay. So we will, the sum is always bigger than the parts in Krishna consciousness. Not only in Krishna consciousness, but in life in general. So it's very important that we have robust, vibrant, strong, healthy communities. And he inspired people from all walks of life, right? Whether it's a boxing star, whether it's a president, whether it's a simple villager who's illiterate, he inspired everyone, didn't discriminate against them. And he was very attuned to contemporary needs. If you look at his lectures, today we are talking about the opioid crisis and how it's ravaged. Life expectancy in the United States is falling for the first time in recorded history. But 30 years ago, he was talking about the opioid pandemic, before it became a well-known thing. So he was very attuned to what was happening in the world and how Bhakti Yoga can fill those needs. And of course, his undying commitment to Srila Prabhupada and devotees, all the risks he took. And the most important thing is he developed new leaders to carry on the mission. So how many of you remember His Holiness Bhakti Vasudev Maharaj? He came here 2 years before the pandemic, right? He was from Nigeria. He was a scientist by training, a scholar, and then was inspired by Bhakti Tita Maharaj. So there are so many initiating gurus and sannyas disciples in Africa. And that's the beauty of Bhakti Tita Maharaj. He left behind this legacy and excellence that will continue. That's what our parampara is all about, right? So he developed new leaders to carry on the mission. And this is my final point that I wanted to make. Although he's physically not with us, his guidance is available to all of us through his books, through his lectures. His books are so dense. Like I said, there are 200 chapters in the 2 books, and all what I shared with you is 1 chapter that is 8 pages. Okay. So there's so much wisdom that he has, and we would be remiss if we don't utilize that resource. These books are available on Amazon. Of course, his lectures are available on YouTube. So, I hope that people walked away from this with an inspiration about Bhakti Tita Maharaj and with a genuine desire to study more about him and his teachings, and that we apply his teachings. So thank you very much for your attention. I'll take questions, comments, feedback. Thank you. Yes, Leela. Anjali.
So, sometimes we hear that, you want to innovate, right? And to reach Krishna consciousness to otherwise those kind of populations would never take up. And on the other hand, there is the traditional, that how far do you go yet you are doing Shastra and you're not breaking it. Right? And can you speak a little bit about how he did that?
Absolutely. So he was...
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, sorry. Leela Manjari Mataji said that often we are told that we have to innovate, we have to adapt and be creative in our methods. But then the flip side is we want to stick with Shastra and what Srila Prabhupada had recommended. So even Maharaj had to face a lot of criticism during his time. Okay. So even he wasn't immune. But he says in the book that you can judge something by its fruit. The number of devotees he inspired and those were committed devotees, meaning they gave a lot, surrendered, gave their blood and sweat to build the movement, not just in Africa but throughout the world. So, and Srila Prabhupada also has said that time, place, and circumstance. So I think as long as we have, it's very hard for us as an individual to make that determination. But as long as we have the backing of Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, I think we'll be okay. Sometimes it's challenging when people whip out a letter. Prabhupada said this, I looked up in Vedas, right? That is sometimes can be problematic because we don't know the context in which Prabhupada said. Someone might have asked a specific question to Srila Prabhupada, and he would have, in that context, he said that. So we can really get into a pickle when we take Srila Prabhupada's words out of context and use that as armor. But instead, if we say, okay, if this devotee is trying to reach more people, then at least give them a chance. And what is the goal here? Both devotees want to please Srila Prabhupada. That's the goal. Both devotees want to extend the reach of the Gita, extend the reach of Bhakti Yoga. So Leela Manjari, I think the best answer would be to have guidance from Sadhu, Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, Shiksha Gurus, who might help us explain. But that is, I think, an issue that has been there from the inception of, even Srila Prabhupada was criticized, right, by the members of the Gaudiya Math, but judged by the fruit of what he did.
Even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was reading the Adi Leela of Chaitanya and same thing.
Exactly, yeah. Yes, Prabhu.
Why were the leaders, when he was the leader of the library party, his sadhana was very intense, but does it mention why the other followers in the party, they wanted to resign? What was the reason? What was the conflict? What was the, did it mention anything that why they were
I think they felt that it was too austere for them. Because of many times he would eat 1 or 0 meals a day. So meaning he didn't have time. His energy was so razor focused on doing what Srila Prabhupada wanted. So eating was an afterthought for him. And you can imagine not all of us are physically in the same way.
But he was enforcing them on others, or he was doing it himself?
But if they were all busy in distribution, you didn't have time to go and get prasad or do other things. So they felt it was too physically austere. But more than that, the question was how Bhaktivedanta Maharaj responded to that. He took that, even if they were unjustified in their criticism, he took it to heart and said that is their truth. That is how they perceive. The cause would have been great, but that is how they feel, and we need to rectify that. Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah, actually, in one sense, he was emphasizing. If you hear older days lectures, he was eating peanuts and carrot, sleeping on the floor, taking the cold water bath in the morning. So he was young, naturally people around him, it's a non-verbal communication. So people around him expected also be there, but they could not do it. So that's the reason they complained.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu. Yeah. Mataji's, any comments, questions?
I heard also that he would leave before breakfast, and then his party had to go with him, and then they distribute all day, and then they come back very late, like 10 in the evening, and then they take prasad. So they couldn't handle it.
Exactly, yeah. You can imagine that is austere. And, not everyone is on their own journey, right? So not everybody would be at that level. But he learned from that. He didn't say, Srila Prabhupada rubbed my head, I'm doing so much. He said, even if one is not happy, we need to rectify that. And brought himself down to the humble position, talked to them and reconciled, made peace with that. So, yes, Prabhu.
What inspired you to speak about Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj?
Okay, friendly fire, yeah.
I told her to explain in the beginning. She said no. So that's why I'll ask the question. We don't explain.
Too late for that question.
Many of you attended Krishnangi Sakhi's memorial. And you remember there was this huge picture of Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj smiling at that memorial, right? I really couldn't take my eyes off, like it was so magnetic. And I had bought a lot of his books, but they were as it is in the shelf at home. And then I was listening to Keshav Maharaj's talk on Gita in Africa. He was talking about Atitya Maharaj and how he was so involved in conflict resolution. At the same time, I was somehow appointed to resolve conflict between two warring parties at work. So that's when I picked up that book, Leadership in an Age of Higher Consciousness. I was just so touched by how genuine it was, how much he talked about communities, relationships, and I think in Krishna consciousness we have a very, very strong rationale for why we should do things, right? But many of us, at least for me, I struggle with the how. How do I translate this knowledge into my day-to-day life, into my day-to-day relationships? And here was a book that talked about the how. How do you do it? And that's when I was really inspired. I started reading a lot about him, and then we joined Kalkanta Prabhu's weekly satsang, and there was one time that Kalkanta Prabhu was so emotional speaking about Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj and what an impact he made. So anyway, all those things conspired, and I felt like we needed to talk and glorify him.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, in the name of
Jai.